Welcome to this GIS report for the Department of Information and Public Relations. I am your host, Information Officer Cherie Smith. Government ministers, national commissions, and other interested stakeholders will receive technical advice and assistance in establishing a Memory of the World Committee and Register. Here to discuss more about this initiative is United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organizations, UNESCO, library consultant and researcher, Miss Elizabeth Watson. Miss Watson, a warm welcome to the BVI and to today's program. The Memory of the World is a new phrase around here. Can you tell us what it is and what is its primary objective?
Thank you very much, Ms. Smith, for your very warm welcome, and I'm really pleased to be in the BVI on behalf of UNESCO to share with you the information about UNESCO's Memory of the World program. It's a program that was started in 1992, and what it seeks to do is to preserve the documentary heritage of the world that is threatened because every day a bit of that information is being lost, either through man-made or natural disasters. In here we have hurricanes, but for example in Timbuktu, the Islamists sacked the Library of Timbuktu, which is one of the oldest libraries in the world. So what the program seeks to do is to preserve the heritage so that future generations will know about their forebearers and the information and knowledge that they will pass down through the documentary heritage.
It's very important to preserve our heritage. So I know that you will be in the territory for about 3 days. Tell us, who would you be meeting with and what type of consultancy services would you be providing to them?
Okay, I will meet with a number of interested stakeholders. Some of them I will talk about the program generally. With others, I will talk about the program specifically as a professional undertaking. UNESCO has asked me to ensure that by the time I leave, there are a number of people who are at least familiar and sensitized to filling out the form. Because while the form appears to be very simple, in fact, where you put the information is guided by the best place to bring a certain bit of that content to prominence. So for example, on the form, you'll have about time, if something happened at a particular time. The Panama Canal is an example in our region. When the Panama Canal was built in the early 20th century, it linked the East and the West in a way that had never been linked before. We could be talking about people. For example, somebody like Sir Larry Constantine from Trinidad and Tobago, who became the first Lord, Black Lord from the Caribbean to sit in the House of Lords in England. It could be about the form. For example, they could be wood blocks from Bangkok, which is on the register. So here I will be talking with people who know something about the documentary heritage. I've met with your archivist. I will meet with the librarian. I will meet with Friends of the Archives. I will meet, if my memory serves me right, with the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Education. And I'm hoping to have an audience with the Minister and also with the Deputy Governor.
On UNESCO's website, it is encouraged that every country set up a Memory of the World Committee. Can you please elaborate on this?
Okay. The Memory of the World Committee, a National Memory of the World Committee, is the body that looks after Memory of the World issues in country. It is equivalent to a subcommittee of the National Commission for UNESCO in that particular space. What the Memory of the World Committee is charged to do is to ensure that it undertakes the work necessary to look after the documentary heritage, because preservation and protection and managing the documentary heritage is important. And what the committee would do is then look to see what they have in their holdings that's important either at the national level, that has regional significance, or has international significance, because there are three registers: the national, the regional, and the international. UNESCO doesn't distinguish between them in terms of ranking. But clearly, the proof for international significance, the threshold would be higher than for national. Because something that's important to you would not have the same impact internationally. But clearly, if you have something that's important internationally, has regional and national significance.
Can you give us an example in the Caribbean of a document that met all three levels?
Okay. We have a number of them, and in fact, we have over 50 inscriptions on the International Register from the Caribbean. Now, UNESCO has geographical division, so the Caribbean is part of the Latin America and Caribbean section. But to give you specific examples out of the English-speaking Caribbean, a single nomination would be Eric Williams's collection in Trinidad and Tobago. And remember, he wrote and was very instrumental in documenting the history of the Caribbean through the lens of a Caribbean person. And so therefore his writings impacted on the historiography of the region based on regional positions. We have, again from Trinidad and Tobago, Lord Leary Constantine, who was the first black person who was elevated to the House of Lords, and he is Lord Constantine of, I think, Port of Spain and Nelson, because Nelson was a cricket team that he played for in Lancashire. So his lordship represents the two geographical domains in which he was well known. From the Caribbean as well, we have the Farquharson Diary from the Bahamas. And that is the diary of Mr. Farquharson, who owned a cotton plantation in the Bahamas. And his diary talks about the management of the cotton plantation. Because as you know, most people see the Caribbean as somewhere for sugar or tobacco. But cotton was not usually one of the plantations that people had during the time of enslavement. So that's another example of the kind of documentary heritage. And then you have what we call joint nominations that are put up by 2 or more countries. And a joint nomination, for example, is the Panama Canal, where you would have interests of Panama, clearly, the United States. You would have workers from Barbados, Jamaica, and a number of other countries who would have gone to Panama. And the fact is that if you had somebody who worked in Panama, your social and economic position was completely different, because you had the benefit of that money coming back to the country and making a big difference to the lives of the families who remained. So that's an example of a joint nomination. Another joint nomination is a register of the stipendiary magistrates, and that nomination was spearheaded out of St. Kitts. And the stipendiary magistrate, that symbol and pattern was done throughout of the region, and it was a particular way of managing the legal aspects of the region. So those stipendiary magistrates' diaries then became a regional nomination. And the beauty about having regional nominations is that a country that might not have enough in the beginning to put on the international register, when they join with other people, then unity is strength, obviously. So that means that many people then have exposure on the register that wouldn't have had had that exposure before.
Okay, and speaking about nominations, let's shift gears back to the nomination form and why the contents of it is so important or so crucial to the documents being considered.
The nomination form is the showcase of what the documentary heritage is. And so you need to fill in the form to indicate why it is you think that this particular document you have, and by document it doesn't have to be paper, it can be film, it can be music, it could be a clay tablet, it could be papyrus, it could be a bit of tapestry. For example, the Bayeux tapestry has been inscribed on the International Register. And there was quite a debate about that, interestingly, because people were saying it wasn't a document. But the truth of the matter is, in those days, the tapestry is the way how people told their story. So after discussion, they recognized that, yes, it is a document. It's just that it doesn't come in the traditional paper form. So when you fill in the form, you have to indicate why this particular nomination is important in relation to time, in relation to people, in relation to place, in relation to form or spirituality. I am right now, for example, assisting Anguilla in looking at the Holy Pibi, which is for the Rastafari community, their Bible. And in fact, it became the holy book of the Hashmatic Church in South Africa. Now, this was written by an Anguillan, a Mr. Rogers, who lived in the United States. And just to share with you why this would be important in terms of time, he wrote the book in the early 1914, round about there. We're talking about World War I, when blacks were having a lot of issues with segregation, and once they started to fight, the black community was starting to fight for their rights. Out of enslavement, blacks on the pain of death were denied literacy. Here you have a black man writing a holy book based on a vision and publishing it himself and making it available worldwide. It went to Panama, it went to Jamaica, it was even banned in some countries. So when you look at time, and then you look at people, and you look at place, there you can see all of the various issues, and clearly it has present-day resonance because it has become the holy book of a particular faith group. So that just shows you that from somewhere where people would say, oh, nothing comes out of these small islands, here it is you have, in 1914, when you think of that time, somebody from the region writing something that is of international and worldwide significance. I mean, so Rastafari, as far away as New Zealand and Australia, use this as their holy book.
Wow, that's very, very interesting. And we are seeing how some regional documentations have been inscribed on the international level. But let's bring it closer to home. Why do you think this program will benefit the BVI?
Well, it will benefit the BVI in many ways. First of all, by looking at what you really have, because the truth is, many of us know we have documents, but we don't know what's in there. And our history really is hidden in plain sight from us. So therefore, one of the things with this program, it helps to expose what heritage you have. That's the first thing. And if people don't really know their heritage and their history, it means you're always recreating it, and then it becomes his story and not the history as it really is. Because somebody will then create the history for you, and you really don't want that. There is also the case of providing children with the sound knowledge of what their history is. And I can think of, for example, for the BVI, when the students have to do their school-based assessments in history, if they had a number of books or pamphlets on the various aspects of BVI history, then it means that when they come to do their school-based assessment, they can do it on the BVI and not on some external place. And then that will add to the richness of the documentation that we leave for future generations. So right away there, that's two things. The other thing is that if you have that kind of documentary heritage that is known about, you will have international researchers coming to look at the heritage because you keep it here, you don't send it anywhere. And so as a result of that, there is the ripple effect of the income that you earn from foreign exchange that visitors will bring to the island. So therefore, while it might look as, oh, it's just a piece of paper, the content is what is critical and valuable. And it's already happening, huh? Mr. Varlick shared with me that people are writing from overseas to find out if they have this particular document in the archives. Now, clearly, if they're a serious researcher, they'll have to come and look at it here. They spend a week, they're staying in a hotel, they're eating, they have to get transportation, so that at first blush, it might look, oh, it's just a piece of paper, as I said. But when you look, when you start to go down the layers, there's much more to it. And so therefore, the national benefit extends much further and beyond. And also, it then gives you an international face, which is what you all want, I'm sure.
Yes, we do want that. And thanks for sharing with us the interest that Mr. Varlick shared with you of some of our local documents. But my question is, once you delivered your expertise with ministry, the Archives and Records Management Unit, and the UNESCO representatives here locally, what do you want them to do with it, or what they are charged with?
The charge that I have is to encourage and stimulate the creation of a National Memory of the World Committee. And I think having had the meetings, in the final wrap-up discussion with the Secretary General for UNESCO, I would share with her where I think some of the skills that would be useful with the view of just giving her my input, because usually sometimes when somebody else will see something that you mightn't see. The other thing I would expect that when I'm gone, after I've left, is that the skills of filling out a form will become resident. I have also offered to look at any nomination form up to the 30th of June that will be done by the BVI, because as I said, the form might look simple, but crafting it in the right way so that the information you put in has the best impact under that particular section. You very often need assistance, and even if I'm doing a form, I will share it with a colleague and say, well, have a look at this for me, because often two heads are better than one. So I will be looking at any forms that anybody sends me up to the 30th of June as part of this particular consultancy visit.
Okay, so in closing, what message would you like to leave with the listening audience in regards to preserving our cultural heritage?
Well, I'd like to leave a couple of things, if I may. First of all, I'd like to encourage your authors, your historians to write, because a lot of our history is unwritten, or it's been written by others who other us in their othering. And so we want to have books or booklets on various aspects of the history of the region, written by people from the region who have gone through that lived experience, or know of somebody who has gone through that lived experience. I would also like to encourage the creation of the National Memory of the World Committee and the establishment of the National Register. I think those are important things to do, and will signal also to UNESCO that the British Virgin Islands is really on board with protecting its documentary heritage for the current generations and the generations to come, because we have to be guardians of our future, and we are the craftsmen of the fate of future generations to come.
Thank you, Miss Watson, for
You're
this
very
wealth of
welcome.
knowledge.
You're very welcome. I'm so glad to be here, and I wish you all the very best in your Memory of the World activities.
Thank you. I would like to thank my guests, United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organizations, UNESCO's library consultant and researcher, Miss Elizabeth Watson, for sharing with us the benefits of setting up a Memory of the World Committee here in the Virgin Islands. The Memory of the World Register was established in 1992 by UNESCO. It is an international initiative launched to safeguard the documentary heritage of humanity against neglect, the ravages of time, climatic conditions, and the willful and deliberate destruction. Today, more than 57 countries have entries of over 120 collections on the memory of the world. For the Department of Information and Public Relations, I am your host, Information Officer Cherie Smith, thanking you for tuning in.